This week we're joined by a man who's been involved in a number of different sports, boxing, GAA and perhaps most notably soccer. Remarkably, he's been the manager of his club for the last 27 years. This week's guest is John Godkin. John, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Peter. How are you?
First of all, where did your sporting involvement begin? What was the first sport you were involved with, or whereabouts did it begin for you?
I suppose every sport really. I played every sport in school. So at 8 years of age, I was playing soccer as everybody would. I played with St Michael's Club, which was down in Green Street in Wexford Town here. Way ahead of their time. At the time, it was a club of remarkable success back in the mini World Cup areas, not areas like that. So I played with them from 8 years of age. I also played GAA at the time. I was actually with St Joseph's GAA club, and I started boxing, which was down to Brother Dormer, who actually see me in the schoolyard one day in a little bit of a scuffle, and my punishment was I had to join the boxing club. Right. That night, I'd be there at 7 o'clock and I wouldn't get any further punishment. So from there, I sort of started to box, and I was very successful. Probably it's the sport that I love the most. A lot of people won't remember or know that, but I was very successful. I won 3 All-Irelands, was through to the Junior All-Ireland final when I had a bad injury on my hand. And from there then, I had an operation which I had the bone graft. So I had the bone taken from the hip, put into the hand, and it never really was a success. So I had to give up boxing in 1920, which was a bit of a turmoil in my career. I went back playing other sports then, which were soccer, GAA, because at that stage my boxing career was finished. And then I started to take on, I wasn't the greatest player in the world. Played 3 county finals for St Mary's in Model 1 intermediate and 2 juniors. I retired at about 35, 36, and I stopped playing soccer at about 30 and became manager with North End's first team. At that stage, I actually got Player of the Year that year, and I was part of the successful 91-92 team, 90-91 team. That was the A team versus the B team. North End had 2 teams into the final. Right. We won the Wexford Cup under Shawnee O'Shea. Yeah. And then I started to go into the managerial side. But boxing would have been my first love, and it's probably formed my character to be successful in the management side in years after that. Like I would have seen a lot of people, and I would have worked with a lot of people in the boxing that to me would have had a good influence on my career. And to this day, myself and Billy Welsh will be still very good friends. As you know, Billy has gone on to a very successful career in the boxing. We boxed together for many years. I was boxing in the time when Barry McGuigan, my first All-Ireland actually, Barry McGuigan got boxer of the tournament. So we would have been boxing at a level with people like that. My year that I had the bad injury, Steve Collins won the title on the same night as me, and he went on to become world champion. So I was lucky to be, training and boxing with people of that calibre and of that ilk.
It was a good era for Irish boxing then, you could say, really.
Yeah, no, it was very good. We had a club called St Joseph's. I actually started out with the CBS. I won my first All-Ireland down the Parkway Motel. I was only 12 years of age. And I'll always remember, because Barry McGuigan got boxer of the night that night, and all the winners were selected to go to England not long after that to box, say Irish champions versus English champions. And I remember, going away on trips like that, and at 12 and 13 years of age to be in the company of, elite sportsmen, as I seen at the time. I was looking up to them, and under some of the best coaches, always stood to me. And you learn things along the way. At 12 and 13, you don't realise you're learning stuff, but you actually do. So yeah, I've been lucky to work with some really, really good people and some influential sort of characters and coaches along the way. So yeah, and like as I said to you, we had a club called St Joseph's. I remember we went to box in Wolverhampton one year. The only boxer that wasn't from our own club was Jim Sullivan, and you probably know Jim. Jim went on to win 10 All-Ireland senior titles. So we had 17 from the one club, plus Jim, who boxed from Enniscorthy. And we actually went to Wolverhampton and boxed the Wolverhampton selection. And it was a small little club here in Wexford Town, and we were very successful. We actually went over, and I think on we won 10-8 or something like that. So we had a lot of good boxers and a lot of good characters in that team as well.
So obviously, as you said, there was a thriving boxing scene here in Wexford at the time. How does that compare to now?
I still think boxing is still very strong in Wexford. It's probably still one of the strongholds. If you look at the amount of clubs that are there, some ex-colleagues of mine, some ex-teammates, Sean Barnes has a club called Lafina here in Wexford. The CBS are still going. Eddie Bulger, who actually I know Eddie really well. Eddie is actually He was involved with the CBS for a while, but I think Richard Horne now was looking after it. Donald Welch still has St. Ibars. And I know Tom Hayes has another club called Clonard Boxing Club. So there's 4 boxing clubs in the town at the moment. Probably for me it's a bit too many. So the clubs are probably not as strong as they were individually back in my era, but the quality of boxers is still very strong coming out of Wexford, and some great coaches there with all those clubs. So yeah, no, boxing is very, very strong, and I'd encourage any parent, anyone that has a young kid wanting to join, girls and boys, join the boxing club because it gives you great discipline. Like, what other sport can you go into the ring where you're actually in there and you're trying to outdo each other for 3 tough rounds, and then you can become best friends afterwards? Like, I've been at many a wedding of lads I actually boxed with and against, and it instills a great self-confidence and a great belief in your own ability. As I said to you, boxing was my sport. When I got into the ring, I was in control of everything that was happening. And it's a sport that I trained hard for and I loved. So all other sports after that didn't really mean as much to me, except that when you get into something and you're used to being a winner, I think that follows you through in your career. But no, to me, boxing was my sport. I always was an honest team member in the soccer. I wouldn't have been the greatest soccer player, but I was lucky enough to win a cup and a league with North End, Premier League in 1986. And I think I won the cup in 1991. I think it was 1991 anyway, so I was part of that squad and then went on to be a manager. So before I managed North End, we had won 2 cups and 1 league. So I've been very successful after that. So up to that we had 3 major trophies, and thankfully we've carried on from that. But yeah, no, boxing would have been the sport where I probably would have been at my best.
And when the days of you as a boxer came to an end, then it would have moved into the GA and the soccer in more focused way, we'll say.
Yeah, I always played them, but only when the off season of the boxing wasn't on, because I remember I got split open in a hurling final with the Harriers under 14, and I remember my boxing coach said to me, look, you can't keep doing that because your eyes are going to be very important not to get open up so often. So I remember I stopped hurling at 14. I hurled with the Fag Harriers at the time. And then I went on, I played a little bit of GAA in the off season with St. Joseph's, and I played a bit of soccer with North End. I went back to play with North End when I was about 18, 19. So that's how I got back into those sports again. But then I fully got back in 100%, I suppose, when I had the bad injury with the hand, because I always loved sport and I always wanted to be part of sport. Started back playing with St. Mary's Model Town. At the time, came straight into my very first year and played in the county final in 1984, intermediate final. It's the last time the Marys were actually there. We're close enough this year. And I played under a man called Paddy Riley. Paddy was a school teacher in the vocational school in Enniscorthy, and another big influence on me as well, because Paddy was very, very old school, but very, very intelligent man when it came to football and knowing the game. So I learned a lot from Paddy, and then I got playing with North End, and I played with the likes of Nicky Jones, Shawnee O'Shea, players who at that time were big in that era and knew the game inside out. Eamon Murphy, Lord of Mercy on him, who died a couple of years ago, would have been a big influence as well. So I got back playing and enjoying sport again, and I played with a smile on my face, no strings attached. And then I started to take up the management side in my early 30s, which was quite young at the time. And at that stage, I just wanted, I could see in North End that we had such a great talent and such a great squad that we weren't winning the trophies that I thought we should have been. Like Ross Celtic were the kingpins of Wexford soccer at the time. And I remember looking up to Pat Ronan. I'm not sure if you ever heard of Pat. He was a great Ross Celtic manager. Ross had got to a Leinster Junior Cup final and had started a breakthrough at the national level. And I said to myself, like, Wexford Town, with the players that we have, why can't we break through at that national level? But before that we had to establish ourselves at a local level. So Ross Celtic were by far way ahead, the top junior soccer team in the county at the time. And I always wanted to first of all emulate Pat, and we take that mantle and then go on to say what I say the bigger national stage. I remember looking and reading about like managers called Dermot Finnan, who was he managed a team called Fairview in Limerick, and they actually won 2 trebles in FAI Junior Cups. And I was always trying to learn from people like that. Jerry Smith who was manager of Vianney Boys, who were one of the top junior sides at the time. I was always trying to, you know, look and see, well, what are these guys doing that we should do? And how do I bring North End to that level, or how do I try and establish North End at that level? So, you know, always would have learned from other people, and always would have took the good points from people that you would have met, because you'll always learn something new every time you talk to somebody.
And what were the key things you would have identified then that North End needed to do to become successful?
I think the first thing is we needed to really take it a lot more serious than what we probably did. Junior soccer at the time was probably, it was some talented players playing the game, but it was more of a social sport, let's say, than what I would call you'd take it really, really serious, or you would give the commitment that's given there now. I remember back in the early, say, late 80s, early 90s, players could go for a few beers on a Saturday night and still go and play the next day. I wanted to take away from that. I wanted to make the club more disciplined. So we stopped. Many a night, the lads would be ringing me up and saying, "I wonder if there's any lads out tonight?" Or, you know, if I heard about a player say, what I would say, out abusing himself the night before the game, I wouldn't pick him. I'd just straight away he'd be left out. So we put in probably a code of ethics that was a little bit different than what had been there. And we would train a lot differently. So we'd probably train 3 nights a week rather than the normal 1 or 2. Pre-match we would meet and we would probably have a pre-match team talk. I liked what I learned from some of the rugby clubs, the way they have the pre-match talks, the way they meet for breakfast. We started to knock on the door then at Leinster and All-Ireland levels. We started to play against League of Ireland teams by winning the league. We went into senior cups. So now we were starting to knock on the door and the players were starting to believe, well, hang on now, what he's doing is actually coming true, because now we're starting to play at the higher level and we're starting to meet teams at that calibre. So you could see the results were coming as well. It wasn't just, I suppose, we thought or believed this would happen. We were actually doing it.
And you would have had, no doubt, some excellent players over the years that would have gone on to further, we'll say, professional or semi-professional players.
Yeah, no, look, this club have been lucky. I played with players that probably played across the water and moved back to Wexford as well. So, you know, like, we had a debate there recently, is how would you pick the best North End 11 ever, and it's just nearly impossible, to be honest. Even if I looked back on my 27 years, I've been blessed to work with some really, really good players. So, like, you know, like Paul Murphy, as you know now, Paul is probably the most skillful player I've ever worked with. Paul went to England at 14 and came back at 18. Homesickness was the key factor at the time. But he was a special talent, and I believe if he'd have stayed in England, I actually believe he probably would have went on and furthered his career, but that wasn't for him. You know, young Robin Dempsey, who's played with us. Robin went to Aston Villa only a couple of years ago as well. Very talented player. Gary, who's back joint manager with me now. Like, I went to a lot of clubs in England, seen a lot of grounds following Gary's career. When he was younger, he came through the ranks as well. There are players that have made it over there. There was other players who probably could have very, very easily made it. Like, you had Darren Brown, who played League of Ireland. Darren played for me and he made his debut at 17 years of age. Actually, we beat a really good Ross Celtic team in a league playoff, the first of our 4 in a row. And Darren at 17 scored 2 goals that night. You had Dermot Byrne. I would say Dermot is probably one of the most talented players that, again, I ever worked with. Got a bad injury, a little bit like my own career, at a key time when he was due to go to Millwall for trial. Again, that was a setback he never really got over. Patrick Sinner actually played in here with us as well, as you know. Pat's refereeing now, but Pat went on to play League of Ireland. A lot of really good players. Like Mick Mulligan is probably the best finisher I've ever seen. And Mick was on Norwich's books when he was a youth in England, but moved over here due to work commitments. So yeah, look, I could name loads and loads of players. To be honest, there's that many of them. It's quite difficult for me. I've been blessed to work with a lot of really good players. But then I'll also say that a lot of them came in here because what we were trying to do at North End. So, you know, it was a little bit of it worked for both parties. We got a lot of players to sign for us. Like Pat Redigan came from Tipperary. I remember Pat played in Waterford, Tipperary with Michaels. He won leagues in every county, and when he came to Wexford, we persuaded him to play for North End, and he came to play with us. So, you know, we were able to attract players like that because of what we were doing off the field as well. But forgive me, but there's so many good players here, I'm not going to mention them all today. And there's a lot more coming through at the moment as well, so I've been very lucky that way.
And is there a good bit of competition, we'll say, to try and get the best players within Wexford Town, because there are other clubs within the town. Does that go on, or is it generally the case that once, I'm trying to say, I suppose, does each area in the town have its club, or is there a little bit of, we'll say, competition to try and get the best?
I think each club, when you look back at its history, would have been founded in different regions of the town. Like North End were always, as I say, across the Hill Street area in the north end of the town. You had Wexford Bows, who would have been traditionally up the south end of the town. You had Wexford Celtic. Again, Wexford Celtic were probably, that's the old St. Michael's club who I would have played for underage. You know, you had Park Hosper who were going at the time. Again, like all clubs were founded in regions or areas, but I think it's gone bigger than that now. If you look at North End's first team at the moment, we probably have 6 or 7 players from outside of the town even playing with us. People sometimes knock that, and I just, to be honest with you, it's like water off a duck's back to me, because they're never going to compete at a national level once you don't want or have no ambition. People that would say that behind, you know, say behind your back. I just laugh at that, because they've no actual ambition. If you want to win an All-Ireland, if you want to win and be up there with the top teams in the country, you've got to have the best players. You've got to get them to gel together, but you've got to also have that quality. You don't win All-Irelands without quality. Like if you think like the Sheriffs, the St. Michael's a Tip won last year's FEI Junior Cup. There's only one player from Tip Town on that team. They're all from the surrounding areas, a little bit like we have as well. So if you want to compete at that level, Peter, you've got to have the best. And to be honest with you, anyone that would begrudge that or give out about it, they don't really know enough about sport, or they're not ambitious enough to go on and be winners themselves. If you want to just stay local and play local, that's fine. But for me, from the way I was brought up in sport, I always want to try and compete at the highest level, or I wouldn't be interested in being involved at all, to be honest.
And over the course of the 27 years since you have been in charge of North End, you must have noticed an awful lot of changes, both maybe within the way people have to be managed, but maybe even local facilities and different things like that maybe. Yeah,
I spoke to one of my old players recently. He says to me, "You're after softening up a bit." And I goes, "What do you mean?" He says, like, you've gone more laid back, and you've gone a little bit more retreated in the way you handle things. And I said, that's just times change. I think I wouldn't be still managing at 27 years if I haven't changed. Some of the things that I would have done when I came in first were like a means to an end. You had to do them at that time to make an impact. Would those things work nowadays? Probably not. I see a lot of the younger players now, they're more an arm around their shoulder, you know, they're more sensitive. They're probably not into that, getting that bit of a bollocking as much as you would have been many years ago. I remember down in Drina when we trained down there, it was old school, you know, plenty of laps and lots of long runs. As you got a bit older, you could see that you could do all that, but also use the footballs more. Like a lot of the new coaches that are there now, like I never ever done all my coaching badges. As I said to you, you can pick up things and you can manoeuvre and do training sessions based on anything, but you need coaches now to be successful. So with the managers of clubs, you also need your assistant, you need coaches, you need a backroom team. When I started managing first, I could have done it on my own. I didn't need anybody else. That's the way you would have felt at the time. But having said that, I also very, very early on could see that I needed good people around me. So I've been blessed with North End. I've worked with like Willie Furlong, and it's important I name these people because they were every bit as much as of the success as I was. So as I said to you, Willie Furlong, George Brown, Wayne Carty, who would have come in with me as assistant manager and a former player. I had Mick Mulligan, who was always one of the guys that was always there in the background, you know, guiding me along. I had Denny Carty in the most recent years, a very, very good coach and a person who was managed at underage level himself. Paul Rossiter, a former Wexford youth player. Colin Murphy, who I worked very, very closely with for a 3 or 4 year spell as well. Anthony Redmond. Also, I suppose one of the key backroom teams for me, who's been there all my career. It's funny, we grew up together in the boxing, and we've been together in major boxing tournaments. He was with me in the Oscar Trainer squad when we won the Oscar Trainer in 2010, and he was actually a key factor and a key member of when we won the FEI Junior in 2018, which is John White, who's a schoolhood friend, and we stuck together all throughout the years. He's been a great influence. and Charlie Delaney, who's back with us now in the Premier, and I even won a Mini World Cup with Charlie many years ago when he was actually a decent player. Yeah, and it'd be very hard to forget John Foley, who actually was captain for me during a very successful period where we won, I think it was 3 or 4 Premiers and 3 or 4 Cups. John was an excellent player, probably not the most gifted player, but such a great player and captain, and you know, he was another great star that played for us. You know, the list goes on a little bit, but it probably shows that 27 years I was a consistent one there, and all those people have always been there at different times in different areas to help me. And as you know now, the last sort of 6 or 7 months, I'm sort of looking at, you know, is there something else out there for me? Do I start to wind back a little bit? I'm still enjoying it. Working with Gary this year, it's working really well. A lot of people questioned whether it would work or not, but I'm a firm believer when both people have sat down and they know what their objectives and targets are, they're going to make it work.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is with me. I'll do whatever is best for the team. I'll always do whatever is best to get the right results, and sometimes that means that you might have to take a little bit of a backward step, or your role changes a little bit. But at the end of the day, as Machiavelli said, the end justifies the means. So that's why I think you're successful once you're open enough to do that. And you know, I'm not the type of person that I want to be up there leading the whole time. I want to be, like many years ago I would have done that, but now leaders can be successful in many different ways.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be you at the forefront. It's the team that you build around you. Is every bit as important. Like.
And another thing that's obviously very important, soccer in Wexford is primarily a winter game, and you clearly have fabulous facilities here to be able to train well. You have the Astro, you have the indoor facilities if necessary. That must be a great help to you as well. Yeah, no, and again, that's why I'm being very lucky to work with a club like North End. You know, people can say, well, you're part of that success as well, but because we've had success on the field, we've always been able to maintain success on the field and also try to do it right off the field as well. To compete with the top teams in Ireland, you've got to have those facilities now, Peter. If you don't, you're going to struggle. You know, why would an ex-League of Ireland player or an ex-say player that played in England want to play with a club if your facilities are not right? You're not paying them, so these guys are not making money out of it anymore. We're still an amateur club. A lot of the top junior sides in Ireland, let's say, can be funded sometimes in the background, but we've always maintained that amateur level. So at least if you have the right facilities, if you're playing on a good, you know, good playing surface, if you have the right training facilities, the guys can be treated as professionally as possible when you travel away to matches. I think then you have a good chance of being successful. But you know, if we're just concentrating on the football side and you neglect the facility side or the club standards, well then you're in trouble. A lot of clubs have struggled the last few years because, you know, they didn't keep both going. They tried to manage one without the other. The club, you're trying to make the club as attractive as possible, basically, for people to join it, really, aren't you? Exactly, and you need both. Players have egos. Every sports person that you know that are successful have an ego. So they want to be up there with the best. They want to be in the limelight. But then you also got to provide the best facilities for them as well. And we still have a lot of work to do here. We've probably stalled the last couple of years a little bit, but we've been very successful on the field, so at least that's been able to keep us in the forefront. But we need now to, I would say, we need to sort of work a bit more and bring us floodlights is the next one. We'd love to get floodlights in here and play Friday night football. Yeah. We recently played on a Friday night and we had the weekend off, so you know, guys have young kids and partners, so they can spend a bit of time with them as well over the weekends. And what are some of the highlights then? Obviously you had your great All-Ireland victory a couple of years ago, but I'm sure there were very many more highlights over the course of the years. Yeah, I suppose if you're looking back, I suppose winning my All-Irelands with the boxing and representing my country, that'll always emulate everything else, to be honest. I think with North End, I've been very, very lucky. I've won 10 cups as manager and 11 league titles. Plus I've been able to, as you said, win the FUI Junior Cup, which was like the holy grail. It's something that no other Wexford manager's ever done. No other club in the county has ever done. So it'll be like when Buffers Alley won the All-Ireland, I can't remember the year now, back on Patrick's Day, 1970s, 80 was it? That'll always stay in the history books. Look how many other clubs in Wexford have tried to emulate that since that. So we've been the first to do it. That can never be taken away from you. And we played in the Aviva Stadium, so players that never fulfilled their own careers actually went out and lined out that day in the Aviva Stadium, which was brilliant. Winning the Oscar Traynor Trophy for Wexford in 2010,
I actually managed the treble that year. I won the league with North End, and I won the cup with North End that year as well. We done the double, plus we won the All-Ireland with the Wexford team. That was very important for me personally, because it came at a time when North End had, in 2006, I think I won my 7th league title as manager, and 11 of that team went to play with Wexford Youths the following year. Now that was, to me, was always a plus, because it meant that we were doing something right when 11 of your players actually go on to the next level, which was League of Ireland. But for the club, it was a bit of a dark period. We lost 11 players. We got relegated the following year, so I was the only manager ever to get North End relegated. It was very easy for me to walk away at that time, because, you know, while the players had gone, there's not much I could do about it. But actually, I seen it as a challenge. So what I done is I stuck it out, and we rebuilt the team, and we came back up the following year, and then within a year of that we won the league and cup double. And as I said to you, I was manager of the Wexford team in 2010. I won the All-Ireland, the Oscar Trainer, and I think that's the first and the only time that we've won it since that as well. So they're big pluses for me if you look at career-wise. But every time you go out and you see kids playing, I love the schoolboy side of it. I managed schoolboys for about must been maybe 8-9 years, and we won the double every year, and those kids went on to play League of Ireland and higher level.
Yeah.
So for me, I get great satisfaction in that, to be honest.
You were manager of the Wexford Oscar Trainer team in 2010. How did the competition go for you, or when did it start, and who was involved?
Well, I suppose my first spell as Oscar Trainer manager was middle in 1900s, and we were beaten in the quarter final at that stage. I had a 3-year stint, because I was managing club as well at the time, which was quite difficult. And then I took it back over in about 2008 again, at the same time when we had got relegated with North End. So for me, it was a great challenge, and it was a great motivation for me to go back with the county team, to try and test myself as a manager now that we had got relegated with the club team. What I done was we started to build. John Flood came on board with me, and Colin Murphy, who I mentioned earlier. A guy called Ronan Robinson from Enniscorthy came in as fitness coach, and we started to build a team. We set ourselves a 3-year target to try and win an All-Ireland for Wexford, because we'd never done it, so that was the target. We were beaten in the quarter final 2008, and on penalties in the quarter final 2009, and we said we'd give it one more year, and Martin O'Connor was actually goalkeeping coach on it as well. And what we done is we said we give ourselves 3 years, so we said, look, one more year, we're going to go at it. And we actually had a great year that year. We're very lucky to come out of the region in that we got a late goal. I can't remember where we played that day. We played Kilkenny, and Kilkenny only needed a draw to qualify out of the region, and we needed to win, and we scored in extra time. We got a great goal. I always remember Anthony Hayes come on that day and made a big impact and changed the game for us. We went on then to play the AUL, who were the kingpins of Irish soccer. We played them in Ross in the quarter final. Paul Murphy got an absolutely cracking goal that day. We won 1-0. We played the Defence Forces in the semi-final in Whitehall in Home Farms ground, and I think Graham Howland scored that day, and Paul Murphy got 2. I think, if I'm correct, 1 was a penalty. And then we won the final, and the final was just unbelievable. We beat a Clare team in Clare in Ennis, and we won 6-0 on the day. But it was 1-0 at half time, and nip and tuck. And we had a little spell in the second half where we got 3 goals within about a 4-minute spell, and that just killed the game off. But always unbelievable feeling. And as I said to you, it was the first time that we won it. We have never done it. Wexford have never done it again in their history since that. I've been beaten in 2 semi-finals since that as manager, but other managers have got us close as well. Brad O'Neill, who actually is manager this year, would be hoping to emulate that success, and hopefully someone does go on and bring a Wexford team on to win in the near future. But that was a very, very good Wexford team. Young Lee Chin at the time was only 17. Himself and Paul Murphy were actually under 18, and both of them played on that team that won the All-Ireland in 2010. And as you know, they went on to have different sporting careers since that.
When you consider that it was only a couple of years prior to that Wexford Youths were set up and took a lot of the best players within the county, for then the amateur team to come along and win the All-Ireland was an even more special achievement, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad you asked that, because people forget that. 2 or 3 years later, when some of the players started to come back from League of Ireland level and come back playing at the Oscar Trainer level again, it was great because we had some excellent teams. But that team that won it in 2010 there was only one of them had actually, bar Paul, who had played in England, there was only one of them who had even tasted League of Ireland soccer, which was Kyle Dempsey. And Kyle had come back from Wexford Youth quite early, so he would have played on the team that day as well. But all of the rest of them, as you said, were pure amateurs, didn't go on to play even League of Ireland level. We were beaten 2 years later in the semi-final in Dublin in the AUL complex. And that team was probably, if I looked at the best 11 I ever put out on paper, that probably was the best 11 ever, but we still got beat on penalties that day. So, you know, you need luck as well, Peter, to win competitions. But we would have had the likes of Anthony Russell, Garrett Larkin. They would have all come back and played on that team in 2012-13. So sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean the best players win things. In knockout competitions, you need luck as well. And that's why they're difficult to win. Like the All-Ireland with North End was 10 games, 10 knockout games, you don't get any second chances. And that's why, as I said to you, they're very, very difficult to win. So when you do win them, you actually cherish them. And they're special moments that you'll never forget, to be honest.
So we'll talk a little bit about that All-Ireland of North Ends. What was your first game, or what were the games that you said there was 10 games? So there was obviously a significant competition. Yeah,
no, it is, and it was unique. We actually played every game away from home. So nobody has ever won the FAI Junior Cup playing every game away from home. Now, we had one home draw that year, but we had to play it in Curraclough, and it was against a team called Crettyard, who would have been quite a difficult side to beat, because again, you have to come out of your region, so you have 4 games to get out of the region, and getting out of the region is quite difficult.
Just for those who are not familiar, what is the region? Is it a couple of counties around, or is it?
Yeah, no, the region would be, it's Carlow, Kildare, Wexford, Wicklow, and Kilkenny.
Right.
So it's quite a difficult area, because some really good clubs in those areas at junior level. So we came out of that area, we played Crettyard, was the only home game, but we played it in Curraclough. We played against a team called Parkville from Carlow to get into the last 64. And then we had a massive draw in the last 64. It was away to a team called Janesborough in Limerick, who would be notoriously one of the top junior sides in the country. So we went down there and we beat them 2-1 in their own backyard. I remember it was the 6th of December, and coming away from that day, I turned around to the guys in the back room and I said, we can win this year. If we can go away and beat teams like Janesborough 2-1 away from home. Now, we've been knocking on the door previous years. There's nothing stopping us going on to win that competition. We got drawn. We got a really difficult draw then, I think, in the last 16, away to Killarney Celtic. And again, a team that had been in the semi-final the previous year, and we put in an absolute unbelievable performance that day. Probably it was the pinnacle of that season, the performance-wise. That's the day we clicked. So we won 4-1, came from 1-0 down to win 4-1 away from home. And I'm trying to think about, then we were drawn away to Airfield, a team from Dublin who were Leinster Senior now. We beat them 3-0 in Dublin in the quarter-finals. And then we went to St Michael's in Tipperary, who Michael's have won this competition before or been in the final on 2 or 3 occasions. We played them once previously, which was 2011, and they beat us 2-1 down there. We knew it was going to be a very difficult game, and we went 1-0 down, and we lost Shane Dempsey just before that as well. He had to go away on army duty, and Lee Smith. And we came back in the second half with an absolutely unbelievable workmanlike performance, and we won 2-1 with 2 late goals, 88 minutes and I think 89th. 2 goals, Paul Murphy and Adam Berry both came off the bench to score. And then the rest is history. We went on to the final in the Aviva then, and that's where we played Pike Rovers. Again, Pike would have won that competition on previous occasions or been in the final 2 or 3 times. So, you know, it was our first time getting to the final. But I have a good record getting to the finals. When I get there, we tend to win them. So thankfully I haven't been runners up too much in finals. And on the day it was unbelievable. We won on penalties. Had a lot of injuries on the day. Things didn't go for us the way we would have liked. It wasn't our best performance ever. But when you look back on it now, who really cares when you look back and you're in the history books? Well,
when in 40 or 50 years' time, when people are looking back on it, no one will know who was injured or who was playing. They just know North End won it.
And it was great. I've been building probably, Peter, for a number of years. We've been beaten in the semi-final 2 years before that to Liffey Wanderers. They went on to win it. As a manager, I've been beaten in about 4 quarter-finals of FAI Junior Cups and 3 semi-finals of Leinster Junior Cups. So the one that has got away from us is the Leinster Cup. We're still in that competition this year, and what myself and Gary were just talking about this morning, that's the one we'd really like to go after this year. We have a home draw in the next round. We've nothing else to concentrate bar our local competitions, which are very important to us. but we would like to try and get a good run in the Leinster Cup. And if you could do that as a manager, I could then step back into the background and say, well, at least I've been successful and we've achieved what you could achieve. So that's still a dream.
It must be a bigger strain on the players then, I suppose, having a long cup run like that in the Leinster or the All-Ireland Senior Cup or Junior Cup, with all the extra games that you have to play and fit in across the season.
Yeah. No, the year that we won the FEI, I think we played something like 47 games. Now that's a lot for amateur sports people. The league probably don't help us in a way in the fact that when you get to the latter stages, you're playing Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. Now, unless you have a big squad or unless you can rotate and have players of, or each player comes into the team, there's no difference to the squad. Unless you have that, you're in trouble. Injuries, fatigue, all those things that come into play. We actually played in the Wexford Cup. The year that we won it, we actually won the league. So we had an absolutely unbelievable run towards the end of it. We won the league, won the FEI Junior, and got to the quarter final of the Wexford Cup. And I remember on the day I made 6 or 7 changes, and people questioned me, like, why would you make so many changes in the quarter final of a Wexford Cup? To me, it was a win-win, because if we won it, it was brilliant because we'd rotated the team and we got into the next round. If we'd lost it, by 3 games left, 3 games less to play, as we were coming in to try and win the FEI Junior Cup. Honestly, at that stage, to win another Wexford Cup or to win the FEI Junior Cup, there was no comparison.
It was something unique that you were going to be able to...
Exactly, yeah. and that became our priority. And I've no bones with that. We even said in the dressing room that morning, we still could have won that game. The team I had out were good enough in the quarter final of the Wexford Cup, but to go on and win the FEI, I think it cements the decision that we made that day. And to be honest, I wouldn't change it tomorrow either.
So obviously great memories from that.
Yeah.
In terms of the GAA then, you said you started to play with St. Joseph's and then played then with St. Mary's in Modlin Town.
Yeah.
And you had a few county final appearances over the years, and this year you were joint manager, would we call you, or
I went back into the management with Paul Carty and Barry Kinsley this year, and really enjoyed it. It's one of the ambitions now, I'd say I still definitely have on the managerial side, would be to get the Marys to senior football level, or to be at least part of that backroom team that does that. I definitely would be motivated, and that would be a key goal for me right now. And I think we'd have every opportunity to do it. We have a very young team. We've the Marys like Paul and Barry have been there for the last number of years. Well, I've been plodding away with North End. The guys have been plodding away with the Marys in Mallintown, and if you look at their facilities, it's not by chance that teams that are successful have the right facilities as well. Like the Marys have an absolutely beautiful pitch and a lot of
pitch there
up there in the rocks.
Yeah.
The clubhouse, everything is going really well. So they're setting the foundations to go to the next level. My dream and ambition now is to hopefully help lead the Marys to senior football, and that's a dream and ambition that I currently have. I played in 3 county finals, as I said, with the Marys. I think as an adult, I'm the only person to play in 3 county finals for the Marys in Mallintown. So I won when I was 35, won when I was 33, and then won when I was 20. And I said to the players only recently that, when I was 20 and you're playing in a county intermediate final, you think these county finals are going to come along every year. But it's so far from the truth. It's unbelievable. As I said, it was 13 years later before I played in the next one, and I was starting to go over the hill at that stage. But this young Marys team, plus if we can add a few more players, we brought in a couple of players last year. It's quite difficult to bring players in at the moment, the way the GAA rules are, especially in Wexford Town.
Yeah, there's a special transfer rules for Wexford Town, which make it a little bit more...
Yeah, it makes it very difficult. It's crazy really, because a player from outside the town can come into town and live and join you. Yeah. But a player in your own town cannot actually play for you at the club, and I think it's a 3-year gap or something like that. So it's a little bit of a funny rule, but at the end of the day, the Marys have fielded underage teams at every level last year. They're bringing in their own players anyway, so in the next couple of years, they're going to have all the players they want to pick from and choose from. It's a club that is going places, and I'd like to be part of that success hopefully in the next few years as well.
Well, in terms of this year, obviously you topped the group unbeaten, and then drew with Bunclody in the semi-final, and they ultimately went on to win it reasonably comfortably. So there does appear from an outsider looking in to be the potential to be there anyway. Yeah, no, definitely. I suppose if we look at the last couple of years, getting over the quarter final was a difficult part for the Marys. So we broke that sort of hoodoo this year, and we went into the semi-final, probably kicking ourselves we didn't see it out the first day, and we went 4 points clear
into the last 10 minutes, and a few little mistakes, maybe a bit of naivety, and maybe a bit of nerves, cost us in the end. Bunclody got a late equalising goal, and then the second day, the problem with the second day is we had a gap of about 5 weeks due to the things that went on off the field. I'm not saying that's an excuse, it didn't help us probably. Bunclody had been at least playing every week either in the hurling or the football. On the day, Bunclody, hats off to them, they deserved to beat us in that semi-final. As I said, went on to win the final easy enough. So the only game we lost this year was the semi-final. So yeah, look at, hopefully we can go on, you know, it's small percentages now for the next year, and hopefully we can build on that and go on to the next level, and hopefully go senior with the Marys. And
as someone that has a big foot in both the soccer camp and the GAA camp, is it difficult, particularly at the April time of year or towards the end of the season, to manage both in terms of players' availability, your own availability even?
Yeah, and that's probably the reason why I haven't been doing ball coach for the last number of years. This year, when we already had set up that myself and Gary were going in as joint managers, I knew then that, like, both of us could have a little bit of more time if we needed it. Gary for his own private life and his own gym, myself if we were successful with the GAA. Yeah, the bit for me is, and like, as I said, I'm a sportsman. I'm not anti-soccer, I'm not anti-GAA. I just love sport, of all ilks. The bit for me sometimes is I think the authorities forget about the players, and the people that run the game actually don't really understand that the players make the game. You wouldn't have your clubs, you wouldn't have your leagues, you wouldn't have your county boards unless you have players. And I think sometimes they tend to forget that. The day will come, because it's already starting to come in the GAA, where it's now club v county. There's a lot of unrest there with, you know, people unhappy about, well, the club players are not the club players anymore, only if the county give them back to you. The county needn't always remember that if they don't have clubs, they don't have county teams. And then also, I don't really understand why you play 2 to 3 championship games in April, and then you have a massive gap till August, end of July or August. Just for me, there's something not right there. I think there has to be another means or a way around it. And then what you have is you don't have players having to make choices, or players sort of, you know, overlapping into seasons. It's just, for me, I think someone with a bit of a brain, somebody with the game at heart and with players at heart, just need to sit down and think, how do we do this and how do we make it work better? Because the players are not happy. I can tell you many GAA players are not happy with the way the season and the fixtures go. And then, you know, they're putting their holidays on hold. They're putting, you know, that time of year is the time of year when, like, I suppose most people like to go on their holidays when it's the good weather. And then you don't know, are we going to be on this week? Is the championship going to be on 2 weeks' time? For me, it needs to be restructured and rescheduled a little bit different. And it's not rocket science to fix it.
Well, once you have a situation where a club player is playing, or a county player is playing with their county and their club, it needs to be a national thing. But I think even at a national level, there could be a bit more of a will to try and solve the problem, really. And even a little bit more cooperation between, I don't know, do Wexford County Board ever discuss anything with the Wexford Soccer Board or the Wexford, you know, a little bit more cooperation in that sense mightn't be any harm either.
No, and I don't really think so. I think they're different boards, they're you know, they have different agendas, so not really. But if you look at Wexford, I'd say there's not many counties in Ireland where, like, soccer in Wexford is very, very strong. GAA in Wexford is very, very strong. There's very few counties like hurling, football. You know, Bow Codes a couple of years ago were going really well in the hurling and the football. So, like, Wexford people love their sport.
Even rugby is another example of a sport that's very big in Wexford. Wexford Town, Gorey and Escort, even New Ross.
I think the GAA probably needs to just have a little think, because every person that were brought up in this county love Wexford GAA. Like, I remember going to Crow Park in '96. I remember going to Crow Park with my granddad since I was a young lad. So there's a tradition there that everybody in the county loves GAA, loves following the county teams. But they need to be careful, because players in the 20th century or the 21st century, they're starting to become a little bit more selfish. Rugby is run off very, very professional. You know you're playing every week. You know underage level, when you play, what the seasons are, what the months are. The same in the soccer. It's non-stop. You know, you start in September, you now finish in probably April, May. I think the GAA need to, like, sort of just have a little bit of a rethink, especially at underage level. Because if they don't, they're going to lose players, I believe, for the future. So right now it might not be affecting them, but 10 years doesn't be long about going around. And 10 or 15 years time, if they don't start making it easier for young kids to make the right choices and play the games at the right times, I think they'll end up losing players that probably could be the future county stars.
So the final question then, John, you've been involved with sport for most of your lifetime. What does the future hold, do you think?
Oh, I suppose the immediate future, I'd love to win the Leinster Junior Cup with North End, and really cap off a great career, and plus get back to where we belong this year, and become top team at local level. Very, very important that we do that as well. We had a little bit of a lull last year. People were all jumping on the bandwagon. We never panicked, because at the end of the day, after winning All Ireland the year before, and the following year with the way things went, it was very difficult to maintain that level again. As you see with all the top clubs, they find it difficult. We still were only 2 kicks of the ball away from winning the league and the cup double last year, so we won't be far away this year again. At GAA level, as I said to you, I'd love now, key ambition is to help with Paul and Barry to lead the Marys to senior football for the very first time in the club's history. That's a big ambition. And just to keep enjoying what I'm doing, no matter what level or no matter what I'm at. A lot of people have always put me in the North End box, and I know a couple of people who tried to approach me about maybe doing other different things. Maybe the time has come to have a look at some of that as well. I'm still very ambitious. I'm still very motivated. Still very hungry to achieve, whatever you want to achieve or whatever you set your targets for. So, and I think I can actually add I can add more to what I'd say the trophy cabinet. Whatever that is, I'm not sure yet. But really enjoying it at the moment with North End, and really enjoying it with the Marys. So, other than that, at the moment, I just keep looking forward to it, and hopefully wish everybody a happy and healthy 2020.
Yeah, well, hopefully, as you say, 2020 and onwards will be successful and enjoyable for you and North End and St Mary's Model Town. John, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Peter.